I'm on my own. No one looks out for me or protects me. I experience a continual sense of need. Nothing's quite right. I'm always restless. I'm easily frustrated and typically disappointed. It's a jungle and I'm overwhelmed. It's a desert and I'm thirsty. My soul feels broken and twisted and stuck. I can't fix myself. I stumble down dark paths. Still, I insist that I want what I want, when I want, and how I want, but life is confusing. Why don't things ever really work out? I'm haunted by emptiness and futility, shadows of death, and I fear the big hurt and the final loss. Death seems to wait around every road and every corner, but I'd rather not think about that. Spend my life protecting myself, because bad things can happen. I find no lasting comfort. I'm alone, facing everything that could hurt. Are my friends really friends? Other people seem to use me for their ends. I can't really trust anyone. No one's got my back. Is there anyone who really cares for me other than me? And honestly, I'm so much about me that sometimes it's just sickening. I belong to no one except myself, and my cup is never quite full, and I'm left empty. Have you ever been in a season of life or a scenario where some of that rang true in your life? Where everything seems to go bad. Life seems to spin out of control, and the problem is that once your mind gets there, you tend to sit down in it. And honestly, that's a narrative that Satan would have for you to believe and to listen to. Today, as we get back into this Seasons of the Soul series that we started last week, we're going to look at Psalm 23. That was literally the opposite of the 23rd Psalm. It was written by a counselor by the name of David Powlison, who identified that Psalm 23 offers hope, and it offers a place of rest. But the problem is we buy into this narrative that everything's wrong and that all I'm going to do is die and it's going to be over with. And we just sit down in that, and our lives end up responding in that way. So today we're going to contrast some perspectives as we look at this, or we move over to the rest that God would have for us, the way that God would have us to think, and the way that God would have us to experience Him. So if you would, allow me, as we look at this psalm in a little different way. If you've got a Bible, would you open it to Psalm 23? Today we're going to look at this in the CSB, and the CSB translates it a little differently, and I think that's fantastic because if you're like me, this psalm is written into my head in a certain translation. I mean, it is written in there. It's written, honestly, in King James, and if I think about it and I work on it, it'll come through in the NIV, but sometimes I just roll through it and don't really pay attention to what it says. So today you'll hear some of the wording a little different. But I hope that it contrasts so that we can see this rest that God has, this hope, this song that God's provided for us. And the wonderful thing about this song, about the 23rd Psalm, and make no mistake about it, it is a song, is that it doesn't tell us exactly what's going on. There's not, like last week in Psalm 3, we knew exactly what was happening. This is much broader than that, and it can be applied much broader than that because it's just a song of rest and it's a song of hope. And at the end of the day, I hope that we'll choose to, am I going to rest in the narrative that I'm all alone, or will we buy into something different? Will we rest in this idea that God is who He is? So let's look at those together. It started with, I'm on my own. No one looks out for me or protects me. That's what isolation says. But Jesus reminds us that the Lord is my shepherd. It's a competing thesis. It's a competing statement. One says, no one looks out after me. And here's David saying, no, the Lord is my shepherd. As a matter of fact, he says it this way, Yahweh is my shepherd. Yahweh himself, he calls him by his name, not this general term for Lord. He calls him by name and says, he's mine. It's personal. We like statements like one nation under God. I love that statement, to be honest with you. But it's broad. This says one life, my life, under him. My life, not someone else's life. It's a personal statement. This is me. I belong to this shepherd. His protection, his provision, his rule. And here's why this is so incredibly important. Because if he's the shepherd, if he's the one who's protecting, I don't have to be. There's a pressure that's released there. And because what does a shepherd do? A shepherd protects. A shepherd provides. A shepherd goes ahead and he shows the best way. Now, that's a bit difficult for us here in America because we tend to drive animals. If you look at farmers, the way this works, we drive animals. If you go to the Middle East, it works a little different. The shepherd walks ahead and he calls them in behind him. And boy, if that's not a picture of the gospel, I don't know what is. Jesus who goes ahead of us and he says, this is the way. I've taken care of everything. The Lord is my shepherd. But isolation would say this, I experience a continual sense of need. Nothing's quite right. I'm always restless. I'm easily frustrated and I'm often disappointed. But the song that God offers would say, I have what I need. Sometimes, if you notice in your life, sometimes God works in slow ways where he's working on me on something for years. Other times, he grabs the Band-Aid and yanks it off real fast. A number of years ago, I used to buy and sell cars in a car dealership. That's what I did. I bought cars for the dealership, and I had appraised this car, and this is probably 20 years ago. And I'm going to say 20 years ago, this car used was worth a number that started with 1, and it had more than just a couple zeros after it. This thing was big and bad and expensive and everything I wanted. And I'm like, I know who's driving this thing home tonight. It was Friday night. I'm thinking, I got this all weekend. Call Mama, we're heading out. I'm driving this home, and it hits me, daggone it. I'm supposed to go to a prayer meeting for the persecuted church up in this church plant called Common Ground up in Broad Ripple. And I didn't even have time to go home. So I'm driving into this group of missionaries who are coming together to pray for folks who are literally dying for their faith. And here I am rolling in a $150,000 car. And it's not that the car was sinful, but what was in my heart was. And it was one of those moments where God just said, see, let's do some surgery right now. No anesthesia. We're taking care of this. And in that moment, he seemed to reorient my perspectives and my priorities. I don't know if he's ever done that sort of thing for you, but for me, that was a marker in my life where things changed, and I said, you know what? Maybe this isn't a little perspective, this isn't so attractive, and maybe I learned to get perspective. I don't know if he's done that sort of thing for you, but I found this to be true. And I found this to be true not just in my life, but in many of yours as well, and folks that I know are really close to God. The closer we grow to God, the more enthralling he becomes. And the bigger deal he becomes. And the rest of everything else isn't quite as impressive anymore because of who he is. Contentment is a gift that comes from the shepherd. The Lord is my shepherd. I have what I need. You see, but isolation would say, it's a jungle out there, and I feel overwhelmed. It's a desert, and I'm thirsty. But the song that David sang says, He lets me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. Lying down in green pastures, make sure you get the picture here. In that part of the world, there are lots of times where it's very dry and there's not much grass. And matter of fact, in the original language here, it has the idea of this is fresh grass and this is brand new life. And there's so much of it. If they're lying down and they've had their fill and it's time for a nap, there's rest here. Quiet waters. Again, we have to think through this psalm. He says that if God is the shepherd, that means He's a sheep. If you're a sheep, quiet waters are pretty important. You know, big wool suit, little spindly legs, right? You can get in trouble with some running water fairly quick. But because the shepherd's here, I don't have to worry about all that because He provides. Now, here's the thing that we have to get on this. God's been pressing this into my heart. Both Christians and non-Christians face and they experience similar difficulties. Everyone goes through struggles. The difference is that the Christian life offers peace in the middle of the struggles. There's the difference is I don't have to be overwhelmed by the struggles because the shepherd's there. That's the difference. There was a gal when I first started teaching Sunday school class, and there was a few in here that know her, but Marge was this simple woman who left an incredible impact on my heart. She had gone through so much difficulty in life. Matter of fact, through cancer, she'd lost an eye and didn't have much. Lived a very, very simple life, but in the middle of that, she dealt with incredible pain every day. It was just part of life. She dealt with pain all the time. But she had a peace about her that just kind of oozed out. And you wanted to be around Marge because it was something to behold. Here's this woman who's dealing with so much. And you know what? If I'm in that scenario, I'm sitting in this seat and I'm singing gloom, despair, and agony on me. Right? I'm trying to get as many people to try to feel for me as what I can. Oh, let me tell you about my stories. It sounds like B.B. King. But she didn't. Because she was close to the shepherd in ways that I hadn't seen before. See, the Lord is my shepherd. I have what I need. He lets me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. But isolation would say this. Satan would have you to believe. The world would say, you know what, my soul feels broken and twisted and stuck, and I stumble down dark paths, and still I insist on what I want and when I want and how I want. I'm haunted by emptiness and futility, shadows of death, and I end up just protecting myself. But David sings, He renews my life. He leads me along the right paths for His name's sake. And even when I go through the darkest valleys, I fear no danger, for You're with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. That is the most incredible thought. Have you ever noticed, and see, we tend to, if you're like me, you memorize things. When I was little, I memorized it a certain way, but I never paid attention to it. I memorized it in a way that would say, you know, I know I'm walking here, and then the next thing, even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, the problem is those two are meant to go together. He leads me down right paths for His name's sake, and even when I walk through the darkest valley, that goes together. The implication is this: the path that leads through the valley of the shadow of death is part of the plan. We have to walk through that, and He guides us through it. It can't be avoided. And he's the one who even through there, we're reminded of his glory and we're reminded of his greatness because he's the one that paid the price so that we can be with him on the other side of that. He's the one who guides us through that. And you know what? I don't have to be afraid in the middle of that because he's with us. And not just at the beginning, he's with us on the other side. Even in the valley, I don't have to be afraid. I don't have to fear that ultimate end because God's with us. The shepherd's got us. And the one who paid the price is going to be the one who sees us home. That's a gift. That's a gift that creates peace that the world's not ever going to know. And have you noticed this? It's a choice at this point. Because is God everywhere all the time? Yes. But when we choose to say, you know what, I'm alone and I'm in this by myself, what we're doing is we're making a statement that's excluding God. But in the middle of it, when we say by faith, you're with me, it's a choice. It's a choice to recognize who he is and what he's doing. It's a choice to say, I'm with him. Lord's my shepherd. I remember a number of years ago, a friend going through after his wife had passed. He couldn't make Scripture make sense. And he wrestled with it, and he legitimately just struggled through it. And we talked about it several times, and his wife had gone home, and it was tough, and it was hard. But then it clicked. And then it clicked as, you know what, she's not in pain anymore. When that clicked, peace comes. Everything changes. I don't have to be afraid in the valley of the shadow. You're with me. You see, the Lord is my shepherd. I have what I need. He lets me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He renews my life. He leads me along the right paths for his name's sake. And even when I go through the darkest valley, I fear no danger. You're with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. Oh, but isolation would say, I can't trust anyone. No one's got my back. No one's really for me except me. And then we realize I'm so much about me that sometimes it's sickening. I belong to no one except myself. My cup is never quite full. I'm left empty. But David invites us to sing along. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows. You see, the metaphor changed. Right there, what David changed the way the song works. Before he was a shepherd, and now he's a friend who's made dinner for you. Now he's a friend who's providing a meal. And he's not just this one who's guiding, he's up close and personal. Now, here's the deal. For that to be a meal in the presence of his enemies, the language there is the battle's over. The battle's over. He's throwing a victory meal for you and I. What a friend he is. And he makes sure, pay attention to what he does. He says, my cup's overflowing. In other words, it's lavish what God's doing for him. It's lavish who the host of this party is doing. He's covering everything. He's taking care of everything. I don't even have to get up and fill my cup up. It's overflowing. A friend of mine, born in the Middle East or Near East in Northern Africa, and he helped me to see this much better. Because in our society, like we invite folks over to the house and you say, hey, what can I bring? Well, you bring dessert and I'll bring potato chips and you bring the beans or whatever that is. But in their society, it doesn't work that way. When you invite someone into your home, when you invite someone over, you take care of everything. Everything. You say, can I bring the beans? No. Beans are on me. There's going to be none of that. His cup overflows. And it's not just that. It's not just that he provides everything. To invite someone into your home and to share a meal means there's a bond. There's a loyalty that now happens. I brought you into my home. Now you and I are connected, almost family-like. It's amazing. See, we tend to see this through, American pitch-in eyes, but if we're going to see it as it's written, we need to see it as they would have sang it. The Lord is my shepherd. I have what I need. He lets me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters, and He renews my life. He leads me along the right paths for His name's sake. And even when I go through the darkest valley, I fear no danger, because You're with me. Your rod and Your staff, they comfort me. You prepare before me a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil, and my cup overflows. Isolation would say, disappointment follows me all the days of my life. Will I be alone forever, homeless? No, I read that wrong. Pardon me. My iPad has gone kaput. So now we're in this mode. Which is the next one? Yes, there we go. Disappointment follows me all the days of my life. Will I be alone forever, homeless, free falling into void? Only goodness and faithful love will pursue me all the days of my life. Faithful love, mercy. When I was a child, this only goodness and mercy will follow me. It's this idea of the Hebrew word is hesed. It can be translated mercy. It can be translated faithful love. It could be translated loyalty. Let me give you the picture. Did you have a fantastic grandparent who just loved you like there was no tomorrow? And if you didn't, did you have a friend that did? Because I get that not everyone has great experiences like that. But did you have that friend that had that? And you see that love that's always there and that's always good and that's always accepting and always encouraging and just always there. That's the idea of hesed. That's the idea of, I love you and I'm for you and I'm not ever going anywhere. Well, what a gift that is. The Lord is my shepherd. I have what I need. He lets me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He renews my life. He leads me along the right paths for His name's sake. And even when I go through the darkest valley, I fear no danger. You're with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare before me a table in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows. Only goodness and mercy will follow me all the days of my life. Isolation wants us to buy into another stream. Was it Jean-Paul Sartre said, hell is other people. And when we buy into that, we say, I have to add that hell's also myself. It's a living death. And then we die. But David invites us to sing, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord as long as I live. Now, I want to be careful here because I think there's a translation struggle that, allow me to teach for just a moment. It says, the way that I memorized it, and if you memorized it as a kid, I bet you memorized it this way: I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. That's the way that it's been taught. And that's true. We know the hope of the Christian is that we will spend forever with Jesus. Literally, though, the Hebrew says, for the number of my days. So I want you to put these two together. I'll dwell in the house of the Lord all of my life, not just when I die. And we tend to force the New Testament on top of the Old Testament at times. Now, that's good because it helps us to learn our theology well, but if we're going to sing this song the way that David sang it, when he spoke of the house of the Lord, he's talking about the tabernacle. He's not talking about heaven. He's saying the house of the Lord, that's where God is. Here's why that's important. You go to the tabernacle because that's where God is. His presence is felt there. So if we're going to sing this right, I'm going to dwell in the presence of God all the days of my life. That is huge. And I get to, we go, well, what's that mean? Because sometimes I don't feel like I'm with God. And I'm going to offer just a couple of ways where I think that we can live our lives in the presence, in the glory of God, even now, even today. And the first one is this. It's when we actively make the choice to acknowledge that God's with us. To actively, and that comes in when you hear a child laugh. That's a gift. That's a gift from God. When for me, I'm going to tell you, I get to watch the sun come up from a tree stand over the woods, or in a bass boat watching it come up over the water. Man, I feel God's presence in those times. When I come together with the church, and we sing and we worship, we proclaim His word, and we have communion, we remind each other that this is about Him, not about us. That's living in His glory. When we together come together and work to take care of those who are suffering and those who are hurting and those who are poor, we feel the presence of God because that's the work that He's always involved in. That's one way. The second way, and I guess I mentioned this, when we come together with the church, when we worship together, but also when we spend time with Him in prayer and in Scripture. And I say these two together because of this. How does God primarily speak to us? It's through His Word. If you want to know what God has to say, read His Word. If you want to hear Him speak into your life, read His Word. If you want to hear what He has to say on a topic, read His Word. If you want to know how much you're loved, read His Word. If you want to know how much He's done so that you can be close to Him, read His Word. Prayer is the response to that. Prayer is the response to who God is and what He's done. Because He loves us, because He's done so much for Him, might change us the way even that I pray. And it gives me confidence when we go and intercede, we step in the gap on behalf of other Christians and our friends and our family. Because we know that we've got a shepherd that cares. That changes everything. But the one thing we have to do here as we wrap this up is we need to say, who is this shepherd? It's easy to talk about the Lord is my shepherd, but we need to identify Him. John 10, verse 11, Jesus makes it clear. He says, it's me. I'm the good shepherd. I'm the one who lays down my life for the sheep. It's Him. Make no mistake about it. It's not this random idea of God who we might think He is, or a general idea of God is being over here, because sometimes we think of Him like a kindly grandpa. You know, oh, He's awesome and He's going to hug us if we come close, but we'll put Him on the shelf. When you want to see what God looks like, look at Jesus. When you want to know who this good shepherd is, look at Jesus. That's who He is. Because here, even in this psalm, He actually plays two roles. And we've got to get this. The first one is this. It's Jesus Himself who walked where we walked. You realize Jesus would have sang this song and would have had to rely on the Father. It's Jesus who walked through the valley of the shadow of death. It's Jesus who called out to His Father, relied on Him, who made sure that everything happened according to plan, so that you and I could know Him as the shepherd. So He's not just the one who walks it now, He's the shepherd who sits on high, the right hand of God. When we say the Lord is my shepherd, what we're saying is Jesus is the one who's looking after me. I can buy into this narrative that Satan would have us to believe that we're alone and that it's everything is terrible, or we can buy into this song that says this: the Lord is my shepherd. I don't have to worry about anything. That's the goal of the Christian life, or that's the rest that the Christian has. And I'm going to tell you this. If you're here today and you know Him as Lord, maybe it's time that we recognize really who He is. We step out of this narrative and we buy into the rest that He offers us. And we rest in who He is and what He's done. If you are here today and you don't know Him as Lord, there's another life that's completely different than this narrative that says, I'm all about me, and this is the only option. There's a whole nother story that says, the Lord is my shepherd. I have what I need. Boy, what a gift that is. And what a gift it is to know this shepherd, to experience His love. We're going to sing now because you know what? It's the only right response to who He is. We'll sing, and today, if you don't know Him as Lord, I would challenge you. I'm not going to try to get you to go back into another room and drink some kind of Kool-Aid or anything like that. But to live apart from Him is crazy. It's flat out crazy. To trust Him is everything. And I'd love to just talk to you about who He is and about what He's done. Let's pray.